I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the pile of bills in front of me, the numbers blurring together as the weight of it all crushed my chest. My hands trembled slightly as I sifted through the overdue notices, each one more urgent than the last. The house, once full of laughter and warmth, now felt cold, suffocating, like a tomb. My father's voice echoed in my head, the words he had said just days ago. "It's your responsibility now, Mia. I'm counting on you to fix this." I clenched my jaw. I had been fixing things for years, patching up the cracks he left behind, sweeping his messes under the rug. But this time, it felt different. The weight of everything, of all the lies, the guilt, and the endless obligations, was too much. Too much for one person. Too much for me. "You've got this, Mia," I whispered to myself, but it felt hollow. My father's approval, once so essential to me, had grown thin. His fading health, his deteriorating mind, it all started to catch up to him, and it seemed like I was the only one left to shoulder the burden. Just then, the front door creaked open, and I didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Victor. My father. "You still going through those?" His voice was heavy, too casual. I could hear the slur in his words, a sign that the whiskey had been flowing a bit too freely again. I let out a slow breath and kept my eyes fixed on the papers. "I'm trying to figure out how to make sure we don't lose the house," I said, keeping my tone steady. I wasn't going to let him see the crack in my voice. He made a noise, half laugh, half sigh. I felt him cross the room, then heard him flop down onto the chair next to mine. The seat creaked under his weight, and I felt it sink in, the presence of a man who used to hold authority, but whose power now felt like an illusion. "I've told you before, Mia," he muttered, as if this was just another casual remark. "You've got it all under control. You're my smart girl." I gritted my teeth, but didn't respond. The years of hearing that same line, "You're my smart girl," had started to feel like a condemnation. He wasn't proud of me. He wasn't thankful. He was using me, and I was too blind to see it before. I wanted to scream at him, tell him that I was done, but I knew better. If I did that, nothing would change. He would retreat into himself, and I would be left with even more to handle. So I said nothing, hoping the silence would at least drown out the growing resentment in my chest. "Mia," he continued, his voice softer now, "I don't want to be a burden. But I need you to take care of things. This place, it's all we have left. Don't let it go." His words stung, but not in the way I expected. They felt like a final plea, a desperate attempt to hold on to something he couldn't control anymore. A last attempt to make me believe he was still the man he used to be. But I could see through it. I saw the cracks in his facade, the way his hands shook when he reached for the glass of whiskey on the counter, the way his eyes darted around the room like he was waiting for something to catch him. "I told you," I said, my voice trembling despite my best efforts, "I'd rather be alone than trapped with you." The room fell into a deathly silence, and I felt his eyes on me. His gaze was cold, piercing, like a shard of ice against my skin. The weight of my words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. I didn't want to say it. I didn't want to put it out there, but I couldn't keep carrying the lie any longer. Victor stood up slowly, his old bones creaking as he rose. I didn't move, didn't even look at him. I could hear him walking toward the door, and I knew what he was going to do before he did it. He would leave. He always did. "Fine," he said, his voice steady, though I could hear the bitterness under it. "If that's what you want, Mia. You can handle it all yourself. I'm done." And just like that, he was gone. The door slammed behind him, and the house went quiet again. I stayed frozen for a moment, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't the anger I expected, or the relief. It was nothing. Empty. I had been fighting for so long to keep us together, to fix the mess he'd made, but now he was gone. It was just me, and the pile of bills that still needed to be sorted. I stood up, feeling the weight of my own isolation settle over me. The walls felt closer, as if the house itself was suffocating me. My eyes flicked over to the window, the evening sky darkening as the first stars began to appear. I thought about how much I had wanted to escape this place, this family, for so long. But now that it was happening, I wasn't sure what to feel. I sat back down at the table, the papers still there, mocking me with their finality. No more excuses. No more promises. It was all on me now. And I didn't know if I was strong enough to fix it. But there was no turning back. The silence after my father left was suffocating. I hadn't expected the emptiness to feel so palpable. I had imagined that once he was gone, I would feel liberated, free from the constant weight of his expectations, his drunken rants, and his reliance on me to pick up the pieces of his failures. But instead, it felt like the walls were closing in, and the house that had once been a place of familiarity now felt foreign. I sat at the kitchen table for what felt like hours, the same pile of bills staring back at me, taunting me with their urgency. But it wasn't just the bills that were on my mind anymore. Something about the way my father had walked out so calmly, so easily, bothered me. There was something I wasn't seeing. I knew him better than anyone, and he didn't just leave without reason. He didn't just walk away from the mess he had created. I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor, and walked over to his study. The door was slightly ajar, and I hesitated for a moment before pushing it open. It smelled like him in here, old leather and tobacco. The clutter on his desk, the papers, the books piled high, all felt so unfinished. So like him. My eyes scanned the room, lingering on the things he had always kept hidden from me. There were photographs of my mother, long gone, tucked into the corner of the desk, and old financial records stacked neatly in the drawers. But there was something odd about one of the piles. It was a stack of envelopes, neatly sealed, addressed to various names I didn't recognize. The handwriting was elegant, too refined to be his. Curiosity prickled at the back of my mind, and before I could stop myself, I opened one of the envelopes. Inside was a letter. A single letter that set my heart racing. The letter was short, but its contents were enough to make my blood run cold. Mia is getting too close. We need to move forward with the plan. Make sure she stays distracted. She cannot know what's really happening. The deal must go through. I read the words over and over again, each time feeling more and more disoriented. Who was we? What plan? And why did my father think I was getting too close? The letter wasn't signed, but it was clear, someone was pulling the strings behind the scenes, and it wasn't just my father. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. My fingers trembled as I folded the letter back into the envelope. I had to know more. I needed to understand what had been happening in this house while I was blind to it all. I wasn't sure what I was looking for, but I couldn't stop myself from tearing through the rest of the papers on his desk. Then, something caught my eye, a small, leather-bound journal, buried beneath a pile of financial records. My heart thudded in my chest as I flipped it open. It was my father's handwriting, but it wasn't like the scribbles I was used to seeing. It was neat, organized, and strangely precise. The journal was filled with entries, but one date stood out. March 15th. The deal is finalized. There's no turning back now. Mia must not find out. If she does, everything will fall apart. It's too late to change course. I read those words and felt the floor beneath me shift. My father had been involved in something bigger than I had ever imagined, and I was right in the middle of it. I wasn't just dealing with his debts and failures, I was part of something far more dangerous. I closed the journal with a snap, my mind spinning. Who was he working with? What had he done? I needed to know everything, but it felt like I was opening a door that had been locked for years. A door I wasn't sure I could close again. I needed answers. I stood there for a long time, the journal heavy in my hands, trying to process everything. My father's departure, it wasn't just about his failures. It was about something much more sinister. Something I had to uncover before it swallowed me whole. As I left the study and made my way down the long hallway, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. It wasn't just the house that felt wrong anymore. It was everything. My every step, every breath, felt like it was under a microscope. My family's secrets were no longer buried in the past. They were right in front of me, and I was starting to see how deep they ran. I didn't trust anyone anymore, not my father, not my Aunt Veronica, not even my cousin Elliot, who had always been the charming one, the one who could talk his way out of anything. They were all connected to this somehow, I was sure of it. And they were all keeping something from me. The next morning, I decided to pay Veronica a visit. She lived a few miles away, in a house that was almost a replica of the one I had grown up in, only hers was always immaculate, always pristine. It was like she was trying to make up for something, trying to hide something. I needed to know if she was involved in whatever was going on, and I needed to know now. When I arrived at her house, she greeted me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was always so put together, so poised. But today, something was off. She seemed tense, her movements too quick, too calculated. I didn't say anything right away, but I could feel the tension between us. "Mia, darling," she said, her voice too sweet. "How are you holding up?" I heard about Victor, I took a deep breath and steadied myself. "I'm fine," I said, though the words tasted bitter on my tongue. "But I need to know something. I need you to tell me what's going on with my father." Her expression faltered for just a second, but it was enough to make my heart race. I had her, she knew something. "Don't be ridiculous," Veronica said, her smile faltering as she steered me into the living room. "Victor is complicated. But he's your father. He'll be fine." I wasn't buying it. "Is he?" I shot back. "Because I found something. I found letters. And I found a journal." Her face went pale, and I could see the shift in her demeanor. For the first time, she wasn't the confident, untouchable woman I had always admired. She was a scared little girl who had just been caught. "What did you find, Mia?" she asked, her voice trembling. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Her face said it all. There was more to this than I had ever realized. And Veronica knew exactly how deep this ran. I left Veronica's house feeling as though the ground had been ripped out from under me. The confrontation had only deepened my suspicions, and the look on her face when I mentioned the journal, the letters, told me everything I needed to know. She knew more than she was letting on. I didn't know if she was scared of my father, or if she was just as tangled in this web of lies and deceit as he was, but either way, I couldn't trust her. The drive back home felt like it took forever. The weight of everything pressing down on me, suffocating me. My mind raced with questions, unanswered questions that I had to know the answers to. I couldn't just sit around anymore, playing the part of the dutiful daughter, the one who cleaned up after their messes, while they pulled the strings behind my back. I had to take control, even if it meant tearing everything down in the process. When I walked through the front door, the house felt colder than usual. I wasn't sure if it was because of my father's absence or if it was the realization that I was finally seeing things for what they truly were. No more illusions. No more pretending. My family had been hiding things from me for years, things I had been too naive to see. I made my way to my father's study again, the journal still fresh in my mind. I couldn't leave it behind. The answers I was looking for were in that journal. I had to find out what my father had been hiding, what he had been involved in. I was determined now. I knew that if I didn't find out everything, I'd always be left in the dark, playing by their rules, living in the shadow of their secrets. I couldn't let that happen. The desk was the same as I had left it. The papers were still scattered, the journal sitting there like a quiet threat. I grabbed it, my hands trembling slightly as I opened it again, flipping through the pages until I reached the last entry. This time, I read it slowly, letting every word sink in. March 20th, Mia is starting to suspect. The deal must go through tomorrow. I've made arrangements. There's no going back now. If she finds out, it's over. My breath caught in my throat. The deal. What deal? And what was going to happen tomorrow? I couldn't let it happen. I couldn't let them destroy everything. My father, Veronica, Elliot, they had all been working together, and I was the one who had been kept in the dark. I closed the journal with a snap, my heart racing in my chest. I couldn't let this go. I had to confront my father, no matter the cost. He had left me to clean up his mess, but now I was going to make him face the consequences. I picked up the phone and dialed his number. It rang twice before going to voicemail. I cursed under my breath, then tried again. Still nothing. Where the hell was he? I couldn't wait any longer. I grabbed my coat and headed out the door, the cold air biting at my skin as I drove toward the one place I hadn't dared go to in years, the old family cabin by the lake. It was isolated, far away from the estate, and my father had always gone there when he wanted to be alone. But I wasn't going there to ask him for answers. I was going there to confront him, to get the truth once and for all. The drive felt endless, my mind swirling with everything I had uncovered. The journal, the letters, Veronica's terrified face, it all pointed to something bigger than I could have ever imagined. But I was ready. I couldn't live in fear of the unknown any longer. I pulled up to the cabin just as the sun was starting to set, casting an orange glow over the trees. It looked abandoned, quiet. But I knew my father would be inside. I could feel it. I took a deep breath and walked up to the door. I knocked 3 times, each knock louder than the last, until the door creaked open, revealing my father standing there. He looked older than I remembered, his face lined with worry and regret. But I wasn't here to feel sorry for him. Mia, he said, his voice strained. What are you doing here? I'm here to find out what's going on, I said, stepping past him into the cabin. I'm done being kept in the dark. I know about the deal. I know about the letters. And I know you've been lying to me for years. He took a step back, his face pale. You shouldn't be here. This isn't for you. I don't care, I snapped. You owe me the truth. He sighed, rubbing his forehead, as though he were trying to gather the strength to explain himself. But I wasn't going to let him. I couldn't. The truth is, Mia, he began, his voice shaky, I've been trying to protect you. From everything. The money, the debts, it's all a mess. And I got in too deep. I made a deal with people I shouldn't have, and now they're demanding payment. Who are these people, Dad? I asked, my voice rising. Who are you working with? He looked away, avoiding my gaze, and I knew then that he wasn't going to give me any more answers. I tried to fix things, he said quietly. But I couldn't. I thought if I kept you busy, kept you handling everything, I could protect you from the consequences. But it's too late now. My heart sank as the truth hit me. My father hadn't been trying to protect me. He had been using me. The financial mess, the secret deals, it was all part of a bigger game, and I had been his pawn. You never thought about me, did you? I whispered, the pain seeping into my voice. You never thought about what I needed. What I wanted. All you cared about was saving yourself. He didn't answer, but the guilt on his face said everything. He had nothing left to say to me. I looked around the cabin, taking in the quiet, the isolation. The walls that had once held my family together now felt like they were closing in on me, suffocating me with their lies. I'm done, I said finally, turning to face him one last time. I'm done being your secret keeper. I'm done cleaning up your messes. I walked out of the cabin, the door slamming behind me as I stepped into the cool night air. My father's voice called after me, but I didn't turn back. There was nothing left to say. I was free. And as I drove away, I realized that sometimes, the only way to break free from the chains of family is to walk away from everything you've ever known. To leave behind the lies, the guilt, the expectations, and finally, to be your own person. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again.